The sound of shattering crystal tore through the elegant silence of Lumiere, Beverly Hills' most exclusive restaurant. A 6-year-old girl had just hurled a $300 wine glass onto the marble floor. Men in $1,000 suits stepped back. Diamond-draped women turned away. The entire restaurant held its breath before the fury of the most dangerous man in America's daughter. But the 27-year-old waitress didn't move. She walked through the broken glass, knelt down 3 steps away from the little girl, and said one sentence that froze the child mid-scream. "I know your heart is hurting." In that moment, surrounded by chaos and crystal shards, the girl no one ever noticed saw what no one else would see. Not a little monster. Just a broken child waiting for someone to stay. Part 2. The Invisible Girl. 14 hours before that satisfying night. The alarm never rang. Elena Carter didn't need one anymore. Her eyes opened at exactly 5 in the morning, the same way they had for the past 3 years. Sleep had become a luxury she couldn't afford, not when nightmares of her brother's face waited behind closed eyelids. She lay still for a moment on the thin mattress spread across the floor of her studio apartment in downtown Los Angeles. The ceiling above her held water stains that had grown larger since last month. The walls carried patches of mold she'd stopped trying to scrub away, and the refrigerator in the corner hummed its empty song, a sound she'd grown used to. 27 years old, and this was her kingdom. Elena pulled herself up and walked to the small bathroom. The mirror greeted her with a face she barely recognized anymore. Hollow cheeks, dark circles carved deep beneath green eyes that had seen too much, too young. She looked 27 on paper. But those eyes belonged to someone who had already lived several lifetimes of loss. She didn't linger. There was no time for self-pity. By 5:30, Elena was pushing a cleaning cart through the gleaming hallways of Morrison & Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms in the city. Her hands moved mechanically, mopping marble floors, emptying trash cans filled with coffee cups that cost more than her daily meals, scrubbing toilets in bathrooms bigger than her entire apartment. The lawyers began arriving around 7. They walked past her like she was part of the furniture. Not a single glance, not a single acknowledgement. One woman in red-soled heels nearly knocked into her cart without breaking stride from her phone conversation. Elena said nothing. She had learned long ago that people like her were meant to be unseen. Her phone buzzed in her pocket just as she finished the last office. The number made her heart stop. Massachusetts General Hospital, Miss Carter? The voice on the other end was professionally detached. "I'm calling about your grandmother, Martha Chen. Her condition has deteriorated. The doctors are recommending a new specialized medication." Elena gripped the phone tighter. "How much?" $3,000 for the initial course. 3,000. The number echoed in her skull like a death sentence. I'll figure it out," she heard herself say. After hanging up, Elena opened her banking app with trembling fingers. The screen glowed back at her with the truth she already knew. $247.32. That was everything. Every extra shift, every skipped meal, every sacrifice, and it still wasn't enough. She leaned against the wall, squeezing her eyes shut. And suddenly, she was back in that funeral home 4 years ago, Daniel in the casket, looking nothing like the little brother who used to draw her pictures and ask her to sing him to sleep. The doctor's words still rang in her ears. Drug overdose. We did everything we could. But Elena hadn't done everything. She'd been working 3 jobs, trying to pay for his rehab, trying to keep them both afloat. She hadn't been there on the night he needed her most. "I'm sorry," she whispered now, the same words she'd whispered 1,000 times. "I wasn't there when you needed me." By 5 in the evening, Elena sat in her apartment, forcing down the last packet of instant noodles she had. The sodium burned her throat, but it was fuel, nothing more. She changed into her Lumiere uniform, black slacks, white button-down, both carefully maintained because they were the only work clothes she owned that didn't have holes. Before leaving, she paused at the small photo taped to the wall, her grandmother's warm smile. Daniel at 15, before the drugs, before the darkness, a family that used to be whole. "I'll manage," Elena said to their faces. "I have to manage." She grabbed her keys and walked out into the fading Los Angeles sunlight. Elena had learned to become invisible when she was 8 years old, sitting alone in a hospital waiting room while strangers decided how to tell her that both her parents were dead. A drunk driver had taken everything in one crash, and no one had come for hours. That night, she understood something most children never learn. Disappearing was survival. If no one saw you, no one could leave you. If no one knew you existed, no one could break what was already shattered. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant no one could hurt her anymore. Or so she believed until a 6-year-old girl in a $500 dress would shatter that illusion along with everything else in Lumiere's dining room. Part 3. The Little Princess Arrives. Lumiere existed in a different universe. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings painted with Renaissance-inspired murals, casting golden light over tables draped in crisp white linens. The air carried the mingled scents of truffle oil, aged wine, and perfumes that cost more than Elena's monthly rent. Every surface gleamed, every glass sparkled, every detail whispered of wealth beyond imagination. This was where movie stars celebrated their Oscar wins, where politicians brokered deals over $500 plates of Wagyu beef, where tech billionaires proposed to supermodels with rings the size of small planets. Lumiere wasn't just a restaurant, it was a stage where the elite paid obscene amounts not just for food, but to be seen. And somewhere between those glittering tables, Elena Carter moved like a ghost. She refilled water glasses without being noticed, cleared plates without being acknowledged, delivered bottles of wine worth thousands while the guests continued their conversations as if she didn't exist. Her footsteps made no sound. Her presence left no impression. "Carter, table 8 needs their Bordeaux. Move it." Marcus, the floor manager, barked at her from across the room. His French accent dripped with perpetual irritation. Elena nodded, said nothing, and picked up her pace. 10 months she had worked here. 10 months of 12-hour shifts, aching feet, and wealthy customers who looked through her like glass. Not a single person had ever asked her name. To them, she was just another pair of hands carrying their extravagance. She preferred it that way. At exactly 7 o'clock, the energy in the room shifted. Elena noticed it first in the sudden hush near the entrance, then in the way the maître d' straightened his posture like a soldier awaiting inspection. She turned, still holding the wine bottle, and watched through the window as a black Escalade pulled up to the valet stand. The door opened. A mountain of a man in a dark suit stepped out, first broad shoulders, shaved head, eyes scanning the street like a predator surveying territory. A bodyguard, the kind Elena had learned to recognize from living in dangerous neighborhoods. Then he turned and opened the rear passenger door. A little girl emerged. She couldn't have been older than 6. Her dress was designer pale pink with delicate lace trim, the kind that probably cost more than Elena made in a month. Her dark hair was pulled back with a silk ribbon. Her shoes were polished Mary Janes that clicked against the marble steps with each small stride. But her face was carved from ice. No smile, no childish excitement, no wonder at the sparkling chandeliers or the elegant guests. Just a cold, distant expression that belonged on a weathered adult, not a kindergartner. Inside, the maître d' bent at the waist in a deep bow. "Miss Rossi, your father's table is ready." Whispers rippled through the dining room like wind through tall grass. "That's her, Dominic Rossi's daughter, the ghost's child. Don't stare. For God's sake, don't stare." The little girl Mia didn't acknowledge any of it. She walked past the bowing staff, past the gawking guests, straight to the corner table positioned to see every entrance and exit. A strategic location, a predator's seat. She climbed into the oversized chair, her small feet dangling above the floor, and sat perfectly still. The bodyguard Tony, Elena heard someone call him, stood beside the table like a statue. "Your father will be here soon, miss," he said. From across the room, Elena watched. She watched the way Mia's hands folded carefully in her lap, the way her dark eyes fixed on the entrance with an intensity no child should possess, the way she didn't respond to Tony's promise, not a nod, not a flicker of hope, nothing. Elena knew that look. She had worn it herself, 19 years ago, sitting in a hospital waiting room while adults whispered about car accidents and drunk drivers and orphans. That was the look of someone who had already learned that promises meant nothing. Mia Rossi was 6 years old, and she had already stopped believing. Part 4. The clock keeps ticking. 7:15. Mia Rossi sat frozen in her chair like a porcelain doll placed on display. Her small hands rested in her lap, perfectly still. The leather-bound menu lay untouched before her, its gold-embossed letters gleaming under the chandelier light. She hadn't moved since she arrived. Beside her, Tony shifted his weight from one foot to the other. His eyes kept darting to his watch, then to the entrance, then back to his watch. The crease between his brows deepened with each passing minute. From 3 tables away, Elena refilled water glasses while stealing glances at the little girl. Something about that stillness unsettled her. Children weren't meant to sit like statues. Children fidgeted and whined and asked endless questions. This child did none of those things. 7:30. The whispers had begun. Poor little thing, sitting all alone like that. Who's her father again? Rossi. The name was hissed like a warning. Dominic Rossi. The one they call the ghost. Don't look. Don't even look. Elena watched Mia's reaction from the corner of her eye. The girl's expression didn't change, not a flicker, but her tiny fingers had found the edge of the white linen napkin, and they were squeezing it tight enough to wrinkle the pressed fabric. She heard them. She heard everything. She just pretended not to. Elena made a decision before she could talk herself out of it. She walked to the corner table, notepad in hand, and spoke directly to the child, not to the bodyguard, not to the empty chair where her father should have been. Would you like something to drink while you wait? Mia's head lifted. Dark eyes met green, and for a moment, surprise flickered across that frozen face, as if no one had ever asked what she wanted before. Hot chocolate, she whispered. The words were so quiet Elena had to lean closer to hear. If you have it, Elena smiled gently. Let me see what I can do. The kitchen staff stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Hot chocolate? This is Lumiere, not some children's cafe. But Elena persisted. She begged. She promised to cover someone's closing shift. And finally, the head chef rolled his eyes and made her a cup-rich Belgian chocolate, topped with a swirl of fresh whipped cream and 3 small marshmallows. Elena carried it to the table like it was made of gold. Here you go, she said, setting it down carefully. My secret recipe. Mia stared at the cup, at the perfect white cream, at the marshmallows floating like tiny clouds. Then she looked up at Elena, and something in those guarded eyes trembled, just for a second. Thank you, she breathed. 8 o'clock. The hot chocolate sat cooling on the table. Mia hadn't taken a single sip. Her eyes remained fixed on the entrance, watching every person who walked through the door with desperate, dying hope. None of them were her father. Tony had stepped away twice to make calls. Each time he returned with the same tight expression, the same shake of his head when Mia's gaze found his. Elena cleared plates at a nearby table, moving slowly, her chest tight with a familiar ache. She knew that look. She had worn it herself, watching hospital doors that never opened with the right faces. 8:15. Tony's phone shattered the tension with its sharp ring. He answered immediately. Yes. Silence. Yes, sir. I understand. Elena watched his face drain of color, watched his jaw clench, watched him take a breath like a man preparing to deliver a death sentence. He walked to the table, knelt down so he was eye level with Mia. His voice was barely above a whisper. Miss, your father has been delayed. There's an emergency. He sends his apologies, and Mia didn't cry. That was the worst part. She simply looked at Tony with eyes that had gone completely empty, hollow, like someone had reached inside her chest and switched off every light. Daddy promised, she said. Her voice held no anger, no sadness, nothing at all. Daddy promised he would come. The napkin in her hands was twisted beyond recognition. And then, like a bomb that had been ticking all along, everything exploded. Part 5. The collapse. 1 second. Mia stared at Tony with those hollow eyes. The restaurant noise faded into white static around them. 2 seconds. Her lower lip began to tremble. Something cracked behind that frozen mask. 3 seconds. And then she spoke, her voice shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. Mommy promised too. The words came out broken, jagged. Mommy promised she would come back. Tony's face crumbled. Miss, Mommy lied. The scream tore through Lumiere like a blade through silk. The cup of hot chocolate, the one Elena had worked so hard to make, the one Mia had never touched, flew through the air and exploded against the wall. Brown liquid splattered across the cream-colored wallpaper. Marshmallows scattered like fallen stars. Crash. The bread plate followed. Then the butter dish. Then the crystal water glass that shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces across the marble floor. Smash, smash, smash. Mia was on her feet now, her small body trembling with a rage too big for her 6 years. She grabbed the edge of the tablecloth and yanked. Everything, the silverware, the candle holder, the $300 floral centerpiece crashed to the ground in a symphony of destruction. I hate Daddy, she screamed, her voice raw and primal. I hate Mommy. I hate everyone. She spun toward the next table, where a shocked couple sat frozen mid-bite. Before anyone could react, Mia grabbed their wine glass, Chateau Margaux, $300 a pour, and hurled it at the floor. The crystal exploded like a firework of razor-sharp shards. The woman screamed. The man stumbled backward, knocking over his chair. All around the restaurant, chaos erupted. Guests scrambled away from the destruction zone. Men in $1,000 suits pressed themselves against walls, faces pale with terror. Women clutched their pearls and diamonds, some crying, others fumbling with their phones to capture the nightmare unfolding before them. Call security, Marcus bellowed from across the room. His carefully cultivated French composure had evaporated completely. Someone call, "Wait, no, don't touch her." Nobody touched the girl. Everyone knew. Everyone understood. That child belonged to Dominic Rossi, the ghost, the man whose enemies disappeared without a trace. Touching his daughter even to stop her rampage was a death sentence no one was willing to sign. Tony tried to approach, his hands raised in surrender. "Miss, please, please calm down. Your father will." A silver fork flew at his head. "Go away!" Mia shrieked. "Leave me alone!" Tony ducked just in time. The fork clattered against the wall behind him. He stepped back, helpless, defeated. In 4 years, he had watched 11 nannies try and fail to handle these episodes. 11 women who had sworn they could manage, only to quit within weeks. None of them had ever seen anything like this. And then, as suddenly as it began, the storm broke. Mia's legs gave out. She crumpled to the floor like a marionette with cut strings. Her pink designer dress pooled around her in the debris field of glass and chocolate and broken china. Her small shoulders heaved with sobs that seemed to tear themselves from somewhere deep inside her chest. "Nobody loves me." The words were barely audible through her crying. "Nobody wants me." She wrapped her arms around herself, rocking back and forth on the cold marble floor. "Mommy left because I'm bad. Daddy doesn't come because I'm not good enough." The entire restaurant stood frozen. 50 wealthy, powerful people who made deals worth millions, who shaped industries and influenced politics, stood paralyzed before a 6-year-old girl's grief. No one moved. No one spoke. No one dared. In the most exclusive restaurant in Beverly Hills, surrounded by crystal shards and spilled wine, a broken child sat alone and spoke words no child should ever have to say, words that shouldn't exist in any 6-year-old's vocabulary, words that came from a wound so deep, so infected, that it had finally burst open for everyone to see. The room held its breath, and then, through the silence, came the soft crunch of footsteps on broken glass. Someone was walking toward her. Part 6. The one who stayed while the rest of the world retreated. Elena Carter moved forward. She set down her serving tray on the nearest table. The movement was calm, deliberate, as if she had all the time in the world. "Carter!" Marcus's voice cracked with panic. "Are you insane? Get back here!" Elena didn't hear him. Or maybe she did, and simply chose not to listen. Her feet carried her toward the destruction zone, toward the small figure crumpled on the floor. Glass crunched beneath her worn work shoes. Crunch, 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 each step a declaration that she was not turning back. The other staff members stared with wide eyes. Tony stood frozen, unsure whether to stop her or thank her. The guests watched in horrified fascination, phones still recording, waiting to see what would happen when a nobody waitress approached the daughter of the most feared man in Los Angeles. Elena stopped 3 steps away from Mia, not close enough to threaten, not far enough to seem distant. She lowered herself to her knees, right there on the glass-strewn marble, and simply sat. She didn't reach for the child, didn't try to touch her or grab her or restrain her. She just existed there, in that space, breathing slowly, radiating a calm that seemed impossible given the chaos surrounding them. Mia's sobs stuttered. She looked up, mascara-free tears streaking through the chocolate stains on her cheeks. Her red-rimmed eyes held confusion, suspicion, and somewhere beneath all that a desperate, flickering hope. "I know your heart is hurting," Elena said softly. The words cut through the noise like a blade through water. Mia froze. A piece of bread roll was still clutched in her small fist, ready to be thrown, but her arm lowered slowly, trembling. "How?" Her voice cracked. "How do you know?" Elena's expression didn't change, didn't harden with judgment or soften with pity. It simply remained open. Present, because I've hurt like that too. Silence stretched between them. Around them, the restaurant had gone completely still. Even the whispers had stopped. "Sometimes," Elena continued, her voice gentle as morning light, "when we hurt too much, we want to break things." Mia's lower lip quivered. "Because we feel like we're breaking apart inside. And if everything around us is shattered too, then maybe the outside will finally match how we feel in here." Elena placed a hand over her own heart. Something in Mia's chest cracked open, not with rage this time, but with the overwhelming relief of being seen, being understood. Tears spilled down her cheeks again, but these were different, quieter, softer. "You." Mia hiccuped through her crying. "You're not scared of me? Why would I be scared of you? Everyone's scared of me." The words tumbled out like a confession. "They say I'm a monster. They say I'm bad. They say I don't see a monster." Elena tilted her head slightly, studying the small, trembling girl before her. I see a little girl who is very sad, and very lonely, and who has been waiting for someone to understand for a very long time. Mia stared at her. No one had ever said that before. Not the nannies who quit after days, not the teachers who sent home concerned notes, not the therapists who spoke to her father in hushed, worried tones. No one had ever looked at the chaos she created and seen the pain underneath. The bread roll fell from Mia's fingers, landing softly among the shards. "Will you?" She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "Will you stay?" It was a question she had asked 11 times before. 11 nannies, 11 promises, 11 lies. Elena held her gaze. "I'll stay. For as long as you need me." Something shifted in the air. Mia had heard those words before. She had believed them before, only to wake up and find another empty room, another note of resignation, another adult who couldn't handle the weight of her wounds. But there was something different in this woman's eyes. They weren't filled with fear or obligation or false cheerfulness. They were filled with recognition, with understanding, with scars that matched her own. And for the first time in 4 years, Mia Rossi wanted to believe again. Part 7. The first connection, Elena didn't ask Mia to stand up. She didn't try to move her away from the broken glass or usher her somewhere more appropriate. Instead, she simply lowered herself the rest of the way to the floor, sitting cross-legged among the crystal shards and chocolate stains, as if this were the most natural place in the world to be. "Would you like me to tell you a story?" she asked quietly. Mia's crying had softened to shuddering breaths. She looked at Elena with swollen eyes, still wary, still waiting for the trick, the trap, the inevitable disappointment. But she nodded, just barely, just enough. Elena took a slow breath. "I had a little brother once. His name was Daniel." Mia's brow furrowed slightly, listening. He used to get angry too, really angry. He would throw things, break things, scream until his voice gave out. Elena's gaze drifted somewhere far away. Everyone thought he was bad, difficult, a problem child. "Why?" Mia whispered. "Why was he so angry?" Because he was hurting inside, so much that he didn't know how to say it with words. The only way he knew how to show it was by breaking things. The parallel hung in the air between them, unspoken but understood. Mia's fingers twisted in the fabric of her ruined dress. "Where is he now? Your brother?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a tremor she couldn't quite hide. "He's gone now. He went somewhere far away." She didn't explain how, didn't mention the drugs or the overdose, or the cold funeral home where she stood alone. Some truths were too heavy for a child already drowning in her own grief. "I miss him every day," Elena continued softly. "I wish I had spent more time with him. I wish I had told him that it was okay to be angry, that I understood, that I would stay no matter what." Mia stared at her with eyes that held far too much wisdom for 6 years of life. "My mommy went away too." Elena's heart clenched. "I know. I'm so sorry." She said she would come back. Mia's voice was flat, mechanical, like she was reciting a fact she had repeated so many times it had lost all meaning. "She promised, but she never came back." "That wasn't your fault, Mia." The little girl's head snapped up. "How do you know?" "Because no child deserves to be left behind." Elena held her gaze, unwavering. "Not you, not my brother, not anyone. When grown-ups leave, it's because of something broken inside them, not because of anything you did." Mia's face crumpled. This time, the tears that came were different, not the violent, angry sobs from before. These were quiet tears, the kind that come when walls finally fall. When someone reaches the wound you've been hiding and touches it with gentleness instead of judgment. She crawled forward, closing the distance between them, and pressed her head against Elena's shoulder. Elena wrapped her arms around the small, trembling body without hesitation. Around them, Lumiere had transformed into a tableau of frozen spectators. 50 pairs of eyes watched in disbelief as the daughter of the ghost, the child who terrorized nannies and sent grown men running, curled into the embrace of a waitress no one had ever bothered to notice. Tony stood motionless, his mouth slightly open. In 4 years, he had never seen Mia let anyone hold her. Not once, not ever. His hand moved almost unconsciously to his pocket. He pulled out his phone, opened the camera, and began to record. Mr. Rossi needed to see this. Whatever this was, Elena didn't notice the stares, didn't care about the whispers beginning to ripple through the room. She just held the little girl closer, her chin resting on top of Mia's dark hair, her eyes closed. For the first time in years, Elena Carter did not feel invisible. Someone had seen her, someone needed her, and for the first time in 4 years, Mia Rossi did not feel alone. Part 8. The ghost appears across the city. In a penthouse that overlooked Los Angeles like a throne surveying its kingdom, Dominic Rossi sat at the head of a mahogany conference table. 5 men surrounded him. Their faces were carved from the same cold stone, expressionless, dangerous, loyal. The kind of men who had seen things that would break ordinary people and had done things that would damn them forever. This was not a business meeting. At least, not the kind that appeared in any legal documents. Vincent Caruso has been making moves in the Harbor District, one of the men reported. Our sources say he's trying to establish a new supply route. Dominic's gray eyes remained fixed on the city lights beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. At 36, his face could have been chiseled from granite, sharp jaw, high cheekbones, a mouth that rarely smiled. His dark hair was swept back, revealing a forehead marked by the faint lines of a man who carried impossible weight. They called him the Ghost, not because he was invisible, quite the opposite. Everyone knew Dominic Rossi's name. Everyone feared it. The nickname came from the way his enemies disappeared. One moment they were threats, the next they were memories. No one ever saw him coming. He had inherited this empire 5 years ago, when his father died of a heart attack in this very room. Since then, he had expanded it, fortified it, made it untouchable. But none of that mattered tonight. Tonight, his mind kept drifting to a corner table at Lumiere, where his 6-year-old daughter sat waiting for a father who had promised to come. "What is Caruso planning?" Dominic asked, his voice flat. Before anyone could answer, the door opened. Marco stepped in Dominic's right hand, his most trusted soldier, the only man allowed to interrupt these meetings. His expression was tight. "Wrong, boss." Marco's voice was careful. "There's been an incident at Lumiere. It's about Miss Mia." Dominic was on his feet before the sentence finished. "Mia? What happened? Is she hurt?" "She's not injured. But..." Marco hesitated. "You need to see this." He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and held it up. The video began to play. Dominic watched his daughter scream, watched her hurl a wine glass at the wall, watched her tiny body convulse with a rage that no child should possess, her voice raw as she screamed words that sliced through his chest like razors. "I hate Daddy. Nobody loves me. Nobody wants me." His hand gripped the edge of the table so hard the wood groaned. Then the camera shifted. A woman walked into the frame. Young, dark hair, wearing the plain uniform of a waitress. She moved through the broken glass like it wasn't there, knelt down 3 steps from Mia, and spoke. He couldn't hear the words over the ambient noise, but he watched their effect. Mia stopped screaming. Mia stopped throwing things. Mia, his wild, wounded, unreachable daughter, crawled into the stranger's arms and buried her face against her shoulder. The video ended. Silence filled the penthouse. "Who is she?" Dominic's voice was hoarse, barely recognizable. Marco checked his notes. "Elena Carter, 27 years old, works as a waitress at Lumiere. We're running a full background check now, but get the car." The 5 men at the table exchanged glances. In all their years serving Dominic Rossi, they had never seen him abandon a meeting. "Boss," one of them ventured, "Caruso's situation requires I said get the car." Dominic's tone left no room for argument. Now, he was out the door before anyone could respond. In the elevator, alone, the mask finally cracked. He pressed his forehead against the cold metal wall and squeezed his eyes shut. Behind his lids, a memory played, one he had tried to bury for 4 years. Serena standing at the front door with a suitcase. Mia, barely 2 years old, squirming in his arms, reaching for her mother, crying, "Mama, Mama," in that desperate way only toddlers can. And Serena's words, cold as winter, "I wasn't made to be a mother. Don't make me pretend anymore." She walked out. She never looked back. Dominic had sworn that night, holding his sobbing daughter, that he would never let anyone hurt her again. He would be enough. He would be everything she needed. But tonight, he had broken that promise. Again. Part 9. The first glance. 2 black Escalades screeched to a halt in front of Lumiere. Dominic Rossi emerged before the vehicle fully stopped. Marco flanked him on one side, 2 armed guards on the other. They moved like a military formation, precise, intimidating, unstoppable. Inside the restaurant, every conversation died. Forks froze midway to mouths. Wine glasses hovered untouched. The string quartet that had resumed playing stumbled to silence. Even the kitchen noise seemed to fade as the most dangerous man in Los Angeles strode through the entrance. The ghost had arrived. No one dared breathe too loudly. Dominic's eyes swept the room with predatory efficiency, searching, hunting, and then stopped. In the far corner, where the wreckage had been cleared and a fresh tablecloth laid, sat his daughter. Mia was perched on a chair with a small bowl of vanilla ice cream before her. Her pink dress was stained and wrinkled. Her hair had come loose from its ribbon, but her face was calm. Not the rigid, frozen calm she wore like armor. Real calm, soft calm. Beside her sat the woman from the video. Elena was gently wiping chocolate smudges from Mia's cheeks with a damp cloth, murmuring something that made the little girl's lips twitch toward a smile. Her movements were unhurried, tender, as if she had all the time in the world for this one small task. It was the most peaceful Dominic had seen his daughter in months, maybe years. He crossed the restaurant in long strides. Tony snapped to attention immediately, his face pale with dread. "Boss, I'm so sorry." Dominic raised a hand, cutting him off. Later. He had no space in his mind for excuses right now. He stopped in front of his daughter's chair and slowly lowered himself to one knee, bringing his eyes level with hers. "Mia." His voice cracked on her name. "Baby girl, I'm so sorry." Mia looked at him. There was no explosion, no screaming, no thrown objects, just a pair of dark eyes that held the weight of too many broken promises. "You lied, Daddy," she said quietly. "Not an accusation, just a fact. You said you would come." The words hit harder than any bullet ever could. Elena rose from her seat, clearly intending to slip away and give them privacy. But before she could take a single step, Mia's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. "Don't go." Elena hesitated. Dominic looked up, really looked at the woman his daughter was clinging to. She was young, mid-20s perhaps, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, green eyes that looked exhausted, framed by shadows that spoke of sleepless nights and endless struggle. Her uniform was wrinkled, her shoes scuffed. But those eyes held no fear. Everyone feared Dominic Rossi. Politicians, police chiefs, rival bosses, they all trembled when he entered a room. But this waitress, this nobody, looked at him like he was just another man. No, like he was a man who had failed his child. "You're the one who helped my daughter," he said. It wasn't a question. Elena met his gaze steadily. "I just stayed with her. Why?" The question came out harsher than he intended, colored by guilt and confusion, and something he couldn't name. Elena didn't flinch. "Because everyone deserves someone who stays." 7 words, 7 simple words that cut through Dominic's chest like a blade, finding every wound he had spent years trying to hide. The mother who abandoned him, the wife who walked away, all the people who had looked at him and seen only the monster, never the man. Before he could respond, Mia tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy." Her voice was small but certain. "I want her to take me home." Dominic stared at his daughter. In 6 years, Mia had never asked for anyone but him. She rejected nannies, fought babysitters, screamed until every caretaker fled. She wanted only her father, even when her father wasn't there. But now she was asking for a stranger, a waitress, a woman who had done nothing but sit on a glass-covered floor and tell her it was okay to hurt. Dominic looked at Elena. Elena looked back. That night, for the first time in his life, Dominic Rossi had no words. The man who made Los Angeles tremble stood before a waitress earning $300 a week, and felt like he had already lost. Part 10. The file sleep never came. Dominic sat in the leather armchair beside Mia's bed, watching her chest rise and fall in the soft glow of the nightlight. Her face was relaxed, peaceful, a sight so rare it felt almost holy. She had fallen asleep holding his hand. For the first time in months, there were no nightmares, no screaming, no thrashing against invisible demons, just the quiet breath of a child who had finally, somehow, found a moment of peace, all because of a stranger who walked through broken glass. At 7 a.m, a soft knock pulled Dominic from his vigil. Marco stood in the doorway, a manila folder in his hand. His expression was neutral, but his eyes held questions he knew better than to ask. "Boss." The file on Elena Carter. Dominic rose carefully, tucking the blanket around Mia's shoulders before stepping into the hallway. He took the folder without a word and walked to his study. The first page held a photograph. Elena Marie Carter stared back at him from the image, a driver's license photo. Harsh lighting, no makeup. Her green eyes looked directly at the camera with an expression that was neither smiling nor sad, just enduring. 27 years old, born in Boston, Massachusetts. He turned the page. Parents, Michael and Sarah Carter. Deceased. Killed in a motor vehicle accident when subject was 8 years old. Cause: collision with drunk driver. Subject was the sole survivor. Dominic's jaw tightened. 8 years old. The same age he was when his own mother walked out the door with her suitcase and her lover. Different tragedies, Same result, a child left alone to figure out how to survive. He continued reading. Guardian, Martha Chen, maternal grandmother. Currently residing in Boston. Stage 3, cancer diagnosis. Undergoing treatment at Massachusetts General Hospital. The next pages detailed the rest of Elena's life, and each line was worse than the last. At 19, she had been in a relationship with a man named Kevin Brooks. He vanished after draining her entire savings account. $15,000 she had worked summers and weekends to save for college. At 23, her younger brother Daniel Carter died of a drug overdose. Elena had been working 3 jobs at the time, trying to pay for his rehabilitation. At 25, her grandmother was diagnosed with cancer. Elena dropped out of her remaining night classes and moved to Los Angeles, where she could find more work and send more money home. Current debt, $80,000 in medical bills. Current employment, 3 jobs. Office cleaning, 5 to 8 in the morning. Waitress at Lumiere, 6 to midnight. Online sales during whatever hours remained. Current residence, a $600 per month studio apartment in one of downtown's worst neighborhoods. Marco's handwritten note at the bottom read, subject sends 80% of income to grandmother. Lives primarily on instant noodles and water. No social life. No emergency contacts. No one. Dominic stared at that last line. No one. He looked at the photograph again. At the exhaustion carved into her features. At the stubborn set of her jaw. At eyes that had seen too much loss and still refused to break. A memory surfaced unbidden, his mother's voice on the day she left. I need to live for myself, Dominic. I can't keep sacrificing for everyone else. Elena Carter was the opposite. She had nothing. She had lost everything. And still, she gave every piece of herself to keep someone else alive. Her grandmother, her brother's memory. A stranger's child in a restaurant full of people who looked right through her. She has no one for herself, Dominic murmured. Marco waited in silence. Finally, Dominic closed the folder. Find out the total cost of her grandmother's treatment. All of it. Past bills, current treatment, future procedures, everything. Marco nodded once, asking no questions. After 15 years, he had learned when his boss wanted explanations and when he wanted action. This was action. Dominic Rossi had never cared about anyone's circumstances before. In his world, sentiment was weakness, and weakness meant death. Everyone looked out for themselves. That was the only rule that mattered. But something about this woman had burrowed under his skin. She had walked through broken glass for a child who wasn't hers. She had seen past the monster to find the wound. She had asked for nothing in return. He wanted to know more about her. No, he wanted to help her. And that realization terrified him more than any enemy ever had. Part 11. 2 in the morning. Elena's studio apartment had never felt smaller. She sat on the thin mattress, still wearing her stained Lumiere uniform, staring at the water-damaged ceiling without really seeing it. Her body ached from standing for 8 hours. Her feet throbbed, but those were distant sensations, far away from the storm raging in her mind. Mia's face kept appearing behind her eyes. Those dark eyes, red from crying, looking up at her with desperate hope. That small voice asking the question that had shattered something in Elena's chest. Will you stay? She had made a promise tonight, a promise she had no way to keep. Elena pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to stop the memories from flooding in. But they came anyway, unstoppable, dragging her back through years of accumulated grief. Daniel at 15, throwing his backpack against the wall after another fight at school, his face contorted with the same rage she had seen in Mia tonight. Why doesn't anyone love me, Elena? Why does everyone leave? She had held him then, wrapped her arms around his trembling shoulders and whispered into his hair. I love you. Grandma loves you. We're not going anywhere. But she had gone somewhere. 3 jobs, double shifts, night classes. She was always working, always chasing money they needed to survive. And while she was gone, the dealers found Daniel, the pills found Daniel, the needle found Daniel. By the time she came home, it was too late. I didn't stay long enough, Elena whispered into the darkness. I'm sorry, Danny. I'm so sorry. The tears came silently. They always did now. She had forgotten how to cry out loud somewhere between the funeral and the first hospital bill. At exactly 2 in the morning, her phone shattered the silence. The caller ID made her blood run cold. Massachusetts General Hospital. Her hands trembled as she answered. Hello? Miss Carter? This is Dr. Patterson, calling about your grandmother, Martha Chen. The voice was professional, detached, the voice of someone who delivered bad news as part of their daily routine. I'm afraid her condition has deteriorated significantly in the past 48 hours. Elena's heart stopped. What does that mean? She needs emergency surgery. The tumor has grown faster than we anticipated. Without intervention within the next 2 weeks, her prognosis is not favorable. Not favorable. Medical speak for dying. The estimated cost of the procedure and post-operative care is approximately $50,000. I understand you have outstanding balances with our billing department, but given the urgency, $50,000? The number echoed in the empty room like a death sentence. I'm afraid so. I know this is difficult, Miss Carter. If you need to discuss payment options, I'll figure it out. The same words she always said. The same lie she always told. After hanging up, Elena slid off the mattress onto the cold floor. Her back pressed against the wall as she pulled her knees to her chest, making herself as small as possible. $247 in her account, $80,000 already owed, $50,000 more needed. The math was simple. The math was impossible. Her eyes found the photograph taped to the wall, the only decoration in the entire apartment. A birthday party, 19 years ago. Her parents smiling, young and alive. Daniel in her lap, gap-toothed and laughing. Grandma Martha standing behind them all, her arms spread wide as if trying to hold the whole family together. 5 people in that picture. Now there were only 2. I can't lose you too, Elena breathed. Please. I can't be the only one left. The tears fell faster now, sliding down her cheeks and dripping onto the stained carpet. But still no sound escaped her. She had learned to grieve in silence, where no one could hear, where no one would know how close she was to breaking. At 5 a.m, her alarm went off. Elena stood up. Her eyes were swollen. Her body felt hollow. But she put one foot in front of the other, changed into her cleaning company uniform, and walked out the door. She didn't have the luxury of falling apart. There has to be a way, she told herself, as she descended the broken stairs of her building. There's always a way. Elena Carter had learned long ago to fight alone. She didn't expect anyone to save her. That kind of hope had died with her parents, with Daniel, with every person who had promised to stay and didn't. She would find a solution. She always did. But sometimes, life has its own way of delivering the unexpected. Part 12. The offer. The mop moved in mechanical circles across the marble floor. 6 a.m, and Elena was already on her second hour at Morrison & Associates. Her arms ached. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep. But the rhythm of cleaning had become automatic. Dip, ring, swipe, repeat. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. She ignored it and kept mopping. It buzzed again, and again. 3 times in 2 minutes. Elena silenced it without looking. Probably a debt collector. They always called it inconvenient hours, as if harassment came with a schedule. At 6:30, she gathered the trash bags and headed for the back exit. The morning air was cool against her face, a small mercy after hours in the stuffy building. She pushed through the door and stopped dead. A black Bentley was parked in the service alley. Not just any Bentley. The kind that cost more than she would earn in 10 lifetimes. Its paint gleamed like liquid obsidian under the flickering alley light. The driver's door opened. Dominic Rossi stepped out. He was dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her annual rent. His gray eyes found hers immediately, as if he had been waiting for exactly this moment. Elena stood frozen, trash bags still clutched in her hands. The absurdity of the scene struck her, a Mafia boss in a designer suit, facing a cleaning lady surrounded by garbage. Miss Carter. His voice was calm, measured. I need to speak with you. I'm working. I know. He took a step closer. I also know you have 2 more jobs after this one. Lumiere at 6. Online orders in between. Elena's jaw tightened. You've been watching me. I've been learning about the woman who will be near my daughter. Something in his tone made her pause. Not threatening. Not demanding. Almost respectful. There's a coffee shop around the corner, Dominic said. Give me 15 minutes. Elena should have said no. Every survival instinct she possessed screamed at her to walk away, to disappear back into her invisible life where men like Dominic Rossi didn't exist. But Mia's face flashed in her mind. Those desperate eyes, that trembling voice. She dropped the trash bags into the dumpster. 15 minutes. The coffee shop was nearly empty at this hour. They sat across from each other in a corner booth, Elena in her stained cleaning uniform, Dominic in his tailored perfection. My daughter hasn't spoken to anyone in 4 years. He began without preamble. 11 nannies have quit. Therapists, tutors, caregivers, none of them lasted more than a few weeks. I heard. But with you. Dominic's eyes searched her face. One night, one conversation. You did what no one else could do. Elena said nothing. She didn't know what she had done, only that it had felt necessary. I want you to work for me, Dominic continued. Take care of Mia. Live in my home. Be there for her when I can't be. And what does that pay? $15,000 a month. Elena's breath caught. $15,000. More than she made in 3 months of killing herself across 3 jobs. But Dominic wasn't finished. I've also looked into your grandmother's situation. Martha Chen, stage 3 cancer, currently at Massachusetts General. He paused. I will cover all her medical expenses, including the $50,000 surgery she needs within 2 weeks. The world tilted. $50,000, the impossible number, the death sentence she had been carrying since 2 in the morning. He was offering to erase it all. Elena's hands trembled beneath the table, but her voice came out steady. I know who you are, Mr. Rossi. Dominic's expression didn't change. Do you? You're Mafia. The word hung in the air between them like a blade. Any other man might have denied it, might have threatened her, might have walked away. Dominic Rossi simply nodded. Yes, and you're the first person who's ever said that to my face. I'm not afraid of you. I know. Something flickered in his gray eyes. Surprise, perhaps. Or respect. That's why I'm here. Elena thought about her grandmother lying in a hospital bed 3,000 miles away, about Daniel's grave that she couldn't afford to visit, about Mia's small hand gripping her wrist, begging her not to go. I have conditions. Dominic leaned back slightly. Name them. I'm there for Mia, not for you. I don't belong to you. Understood. And when my grandmother recovers, I have the right to leave, whenever I want. No questions. Dominic studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he extended his hand across the table. Deal. Elena shook it. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not crushing. The hand of a killer, she thought, the hand that might be saving her grandmother's life. She knew she was stepping into a world of shadows and danger, a world where men disappeared and loyalty was paid for in blood. But between watching her grandmother die and working for the most dangerous man in Los Angeles, there was no real choice at all. At least, Elena told herself, she was doing this for a child who needed her. That had to count for something. Part 13. Into the wolf's den. The black SUV wound up the Hollywood Hills like a serpent ascending to its lair. Elena pressed her forehead against the window, watching the city shrink below. The higher they climbed, the further she felt from everything she had ever known. The cramped studio, the endless shifts, the world where people like her remained invisible. Then the gates appeared. Wrought iron stretched 15 feet high, topped with spikes that glinted in the morning sun. Security cameras perched on every post, their red lights blinking like watchful eyes. Armed guards in dark suits stood at attention, speaking into earpieces as the car approached. The gates swung open without a sound. Beyond them lay something out of a fever dream. The Rossi mansion sprawled across the hilltop like a modern palace. Glass and white stone, sharp angles and endless windows. Manicured gardens surrounded the structure, every hedge trimmed to perfection, every flower arranged with military precision. This is a different world, Elena murmured to herself. The driver said nothing. He hadn't spoken a single word since picking her up from her apartment, if you could call the 15 minutes of throwing her meager belongings into a duffel bag packing. Inside, the mansion was even more overwhelming. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Modern art hung on walls that could have housed entire families. A grand staircase curved upward like a frozen wave. Everything was immaculate, expensive, perfect, and completely cold. No family photos on the walls, no scattered toys, no evidence that a child lived here at all. The house felt like a museum, beautiful and utterly lifeless. A line of household staff stood waiting, each one nodding respectfully as Elena passed. Their faces were professionally blank, revealing nothing. At the end of the line stood an older woman with graying hair pulled into a severe bun. Her expression carried the weariness of someone who had fought a long battle and lost. You must be the new one. Her voice was flat. I'm Mrs. Patterson. I've been managing Miss Mia's care for the past 3 months. Elena Carter. Mrs. Patterson's lips pressed into a thin line. I wish you luck, Miss Carter. You'll need it. She thrust a folder into Elena's hands. Miss Mia's schedule, her dietary restrictions, the list of triggers that cause her episodes. The woman flipped through pages filled with dense handwriting. Foods she won't eat, words that set her off, topics to avoid, activities that calm her down when anything works at all. The document was 2 pages long, 2 pages of warnings about a 6-year-old girl. The previous 11 of us couldn't last. Mrs. Patterson continued. The longest stayed 6 weeks. The shortest made it 4 hours. She picked up a small suitcase by her feet. My resignation is effective immediately. Good luck. She walked out without looking back. Elena stood alone in the cavernous foyer, clutching the folder, feeling the weight of the empty house pressing down on her. Then she heard it, small footsteps on the marble stairs. She looked up. Mia stood on the landing, wearing a white dress that made her look like a ghost. Her dark eyes fixed on Elena with an expression that mixed suspicion, hope, and practiced detachment. "You came. I told you I would." Mia descended slowly, one step at a time. They all come at first. Then they leave. Elena set down her bag and knelt, bringing herself to Mia's eye level. "I made you a promise, remember? I keep my promises. Mommy promised too." The words were a test, a wall, a weapon. "I'm not your mommy," Elena said gently. "I won't pretend to be. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Mia stared at her for a long moment. Then she turned and walked toward the dining room. "I don't eat breakfast," she announced over her shoulder. 15 minutes later, a plate of fresh pancakes flew off the table and shattered against the floor. The kitchen staff flinched. A maid gasped. Everyone waited for Elena to scream, to threaten, to storm out like all the others. Elena did none of those things. She calmly picked up the broken pieces, wiped up the syrup, and sat down at the table with her own plate of pancakes. "You don't have to eat," she said, cutting into her food. "I'll just sit here with you." Mia froze. This wasn't in the script. Adults were supposed to yell, to punish, to leave. "What are you doing?" Mia demanded. "Eating breakfast." Elena took a bite. "You're welcome to join me or not. Either way, I'm staying right here." Confusion flickered across the little girl's face. She didn't know how to respond to someone who refused to react. In his study on the second floor, Dominic watched through the security feed. He saw Elena sitting calmly amid the chaos, saw her patience, her steadiness, her complete refusal to abandon her post, saw his daughter's bewildered expression, the look of someone whose walls were being quietly dismantled. For the first time in years, something loosened in his chest. Hope. That night, Elena lay in a bedroom larger than her entire studio apartment. Egyptian cotton sheets, silk pillows, a bathroom with heated floors. She noticed none of it. Instead, she stared at the ceiling, thinking of the little girl down the hall, the girl who expected everyone to leave, the girl who had learned to push people away before they could abandon her first. "I won't leave," Elena whispered into the darkness. "I promise." Somewhere in the mansion, a child who had forgotten how to trust lay awake, wondering if this time might be different. Part 14. The first weeks. The first week was war. Mia launched every weapon in her arsenal. Toys flew across rooms. Doors slammed hard enough to shake the walls. Meals went untouched, then overturned, then thrown. She refused to speak, refused to make eye contact, refused to acknowledge Elena's existence even when they were alone together. Every night, Elena read stories aloud anyway. She sat in the chair beside Mia's bed, opened a book, and read. It didn't matter that the little girl turned her back. It didn't matter that she pulled the covers over her head and pretended to be asleep. Elena read every word, every page, every chapter. "Good night, Mia," she would say when the story ended. "I'll be here tomorrow." From his study, Dominic watched through the security cameras. He watched Elena's patience hold steady when anyone else would have cracked, watched her clean up destruction without complaint, absorb silence without resentment, return kindness for cruelty again and again. He didn't understand it. No one had ever stayed this long. The second week, something shifted. Elena was reading Charlotte's Web, the chapter where Wilbur realizes Charlotte won't live forever when a small voice interrupted from beneath the blankets. "Miss Elena?" Elena paused. "Yes?" A long silence. Then, "What was your brother like?" The question hit Elena like a wave. She set the book down carefully, giving herself a moment to breathe. "Daniel was funny," she said finally. "He used to hide behind doors and jump out to scare me. He drew pictures of dragons and superheroes and gave them to me for every birthday." The blankets rustled. One dark eye appeared, watching her. "We used to play hide and seek in our grandmother's house," Elena continued, her voice soft with memory. "He always hid in the same closet, but I pretended I couldn't find him anyway. He loved that." "Did he laugh a lot? When he was little?" "Yes. He had the best laugh." Mia said nothing more that night. But she didn't turn away either. She lay there, watching Elena's face as she finished the chapter, seeing something she hadn't seen before, someone who understood loss. By the third week, Mia began seeking Elena out. She would appear in doorways, silent as a shadow, watching Elena fold laundry or organize books. The questions came slowly at first, then faster. "Did Daniel get angry like me?" Elena looked up from the sweater she was folding. "Yes. Very angry sometimes." "Why?" because he was hurting inside, and he didn't know how to make it stop. Mia sat down on the edge of the bed, her small feet dangling above the floor. I hurt inside too. I know you do, sweetheart. Is that why I break things? Because I'm hurting? Elena set the sweater aside and knelt in front of her. Sometimes, when the pain gets too big, it has to come out somehow. There's nothing wrong with you, Mia. You're not bad. You're not broken. You're just a little girl carrying something much too heavy. Mia's lower lip trembled. You really think so? I know so. And you're allowed to hurt. You're allowed to feel sad and angry and scared. I'll be right here through all of it. That night, for the first time, Mia reached for Elena's hand during story time. The 4th week brought a miracle. Elena found it on her pillow one morning, a piece of paper covered in crayon. 2 figures held hands beneath a yellow sun. One was tall with long dark hair. One was small with a pink dress. At the bottom, in wobbly letters, Elena and Maya. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, holding the drawing, and cried. Not the silent tears she had learned to hide. Real tears, healing tears. The kind that come when something frozen finally begins to thaw. Dominic noticed everything. He noticed Mia smiling at breakfast, a sight he hadn't seen in 2 years. Noticed her chattering about school, about books, about the butterfly she saw in the garden. Noticed how she looked for Elena the moment she woke up and reached for her hand before falling asleep. He started coming home earlier. Not for meetings, not for work, just to hear his daughter laugh. One night, he returned late from a business dinner to find Mia's door cracked open. Soft light spilled into the hallway, along with a sound that stopped him in his tracks. Singing. Elena sat on the edge of the bed. Mia curled against her side, singing a lullaby in a voice that was slightly off-key but filled with such tenderness it made his chest ache. It was a song about stars and dreams, and being safe in someone's arms. Dominic stood frozen in the shadows, watching this woman who had walked into his world and somehow made it warmer, his heart clenched with something he couldn't name, something dangerous, something he had sworn never to feel again. Lena? Mia's sleepy voice drifted through the door. Yes, sweetheart. Can I call you just Lena? Without the miss. Elena smoothed the hair from Mia's forehead. You can call me whatever you want. A small smile. A whispered answer. My Lena. 4 weeks. In 4 weeks, Elena Carter had done what 11 nannies couldn't accomplish in 4 years. She had reached a child everyone had given up on. She had brought light into a house that had known only shadows. Dominic watched his 2 girls, one big, one small, and for the first time in his life, believed in miracles. Part 15. The Miracle. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Elena stood in the living room, phone pressed to her ear, listening to words she had never dared to hope for. Miss Carter, this is Dr. Harrison from Massachusetts General. I'm pleased to inform you that your grandmother has been transferred to our specialized oncology unit. The surgery has been scheduled for next week with our top surgical team. Elena's legs went weak. The financial arrangements have been completed. The doctor continued. All current and future expenses are covered. Mrs. Chen will receive the best care available. She couldn't speak. For months, she had carried the weight of impossible numbers. 80,000 in debt, 50,000 more needed. A death sentence written in hospital bills. And now, with one phone call, it was gone. Dominic had kept his word. Elena ended the call and stood frozen in the middle of the room. Her chest heaved, her eyes burned, but the tears wouldn't come. She had spent so many years forcing them down that her body had forgotten how to release them. That afternoon, she called her grandmother. Nana? It's Elena. My sweet girl. Martha's voice was weaker than before, but warm with love. I miss you so much. I miss you too, Nana, but you're going to be okay. The surgery is scheduled. Everything is taken care of. A pause. The hospital said someone paid for everything. Who helped us? Elena. Who did this? Elena closed her eyes. She couldn't explain the truth, couldn't tell her grandmother that she was living in a mafia boss's mansion, caring for his daughter, trading her freedom for medical bills. I got a new job. Nana. A really good one. It pays well. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Martha's voice cracked. But promise me you're taking care of yourself too. You always put everyone else first. I promise, Nana. I'm fine. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. After hanging up, Elena pressed her hand over her mouth to stifle the sob rising in her throat. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks, tears she hadn't been able to cry for years. Lena? She spun around. Mia stood in the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her dark eyes wide with concern. Why are you crying? Elena quickly wiped her face. I'm happy, sweetheart. These are happy tears. Happy tears? Mia tilted her head. That's a thing? Sometimes when something really wonderful happens, we cry because our hearts are too full. What happened? My grandmother is going to have surgery. She's going to get better. Mia's face softened with understanding beyond her years. Your Nana was sick? Yes, very sick. But she's going to be okay now. The little girl crossed the room and wrapped her arms around Elena's waist, pressing her face against her stomach. I'll pray for your Nana, Mia whispered. Every night. I'll ask God to make her better. Elena held her tight, fresh tears falling into the child's dark hair. 2 weeks later, the message arrived. Surgery successful. Patient recovering well. Prognosis excellent. Elena read the words 3 times before they sank in. Then she slid down the hallway wall and sat on the cold marble floor, and for the first time since Daniel's funeral, she wept. Not silent tears, not controlled tears. Deep, racking sobs that shook her entire body, releasing years of accumulated grief and fear and exhaustion. That was how Dominic found her. He had come home early, something he did more often now, and discovered her crumpled against the wall, shoulders heaving. Elena? He was beside her in 3 strides, kneeling down. What happened? What's wrong? She looked up at him through blurred eyes. My grandmother. She's going to live. Relief flooded his features, followed by something softer. That's good news. I don't know how to thank you. Her voice broke. I can never repay. Stop. Dominic's tone was firm but gentle. You don't owe me anything, but you saved her life. You saved my daughter's. He settled onto the floor beside her, his shoulder almost touching hers. What you've done for Mia in 5 weeks. I couldn't buy that. No amount of money could make her smile the way she does now. Elena shook her head. I just stayed with her. That's exactly it. Dominic's gray eyes held hers. You stayed. No one else ever did. They sat there in the hallway, 2 people who had learned to carry their burdens alone, finally feeling the unfamiliar comfort of someone sitting beside them. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Part 16. Shadows lurking across the city. In an office that smelled of cigars and ambition, Vincent Caruso spread photographs across his mahogany desk. His eyes moved slowly over each image. Elena walking Mia to school. Elena holding the child's hand in the park. Elena laughing at something the little girl said, her face unguarded. Beautiful. So, Vincent murmured, a cold smile spreading across his weathered face. The ghost has found himself a new weakness. His lieutenant stood at attention nearby. We've been watching for 3 weeks, boss. She lives in the mansion, takes care of the kid. Rossi's people protect her like she's family. Vincent picked up a photo of Elena's face, studying it. Find out everything about her, where she came from, who she loves, what she fears. Yes, sir. Dominic Rossi has been untouchable for years, Vincent continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. But every man has a pressure point. I think we just found his. 3 weeks of peace shattered on a Wednesday afternoon. Elena pulled up to Westbrook Academy in the black sedan Tony usually drove. Mia bounded out of the school gates, her backpack bouncing, chattering about the painting she made in art class. And I used purple and gold. Lena, the teacher said it was the most creative one. That sounds beautiful. Sweetheart, I can't wait to see it. Elena buckled Mia into her car seat and pulled away from the curb. It took her exactly 4 blocks to notice the black SUV in her rearview mirror. Her heart stuttered. The vehicle maintained a careful distance close enough to follow, far enough to seem coincidental. But Elena had spent years living in neighborhoods where survival meant reading danger before it arrived. This was not coincidence. Lena? Mia's voice piped up from the back seat. Why are we going this way? Elena forced her voice to stay light. I thought we'd play a game. Let's find a new route home and see how many red cars we can count. Okay. Mia pressed her face to the window, oblivious to the threat trailing behind them. Elena turned left instead of right, weaving into a busier commercial district. Her fingers found her phone and speed-dialed Tony. Someone's following us, she said quietly, keeping her tone even. Black SUV, tinted windows. I'm heading toward the shopping center on 5th. Tony's voice was sharp. Stay in public areas. We're coming. Elena drove through crowded streets, never speeding, never showing panic. She counted red cars with Mia, made silly jokes, sang along to the radio, all while watching the SUV in her mirror. When Tony's convoy appeared, the black vehicle melted into traffic and disappeared. Back at the mansion, Elena walked Mia inside with steady hands and a bright smile. She helped her wash up for dinner, admired the painting, listened to stories about playground adventures. Only when Mia skipped off to find her father did Elena allow herself to fall apart. She leaned against the hallway wall, her whole body trembling. Her lungs couldn't seem to find enough air. The fear she had suppressed for an hour came crashing over her like a wave. "You okay?" Tony appeared beside her, his face grave. "I'm fine." The lie tasted like ash. "Please don't tell Mia. She doesn't need to know." 20 minutes later, Dominic's roar echoed through the mansion. How did this happen? His fist slammed against the conference table hard enough to crack the wood. 5 security personnel stood at attention, faces pale, as their boss unleashed a fury none of them had ever witnessed. She was followed for 12 blocks. "My daughter was in that car. Where were your people? Where was the protection I'm paying for?" Marco stepped forward carefully. "Boss, please, we need to calm down?" Dominic spun on him. "My child, almost, Elena, almost." He stopped. His chest heaved with ragged breaths. When he found Elena, his rage was still burning, but the sight of her stopped him cold. She sat beside Mia's bed, watching the sleeping child, her face ghost white but composed. No tears, no hysteria, just quiet vigilance over the girl she had promised to protect. "You're not afraid?" he asked from the doorway. Elena looked up. "I'm terrified. I've been terrified since the moment I saw that car. Then how? Because Mia needed me to be calm." Her green eyes held his. "Fear is a luxury I couldn't afford today." Dominic stared at her. This woman was not fragile. She was not helpless. She had faced danger and swallowed her terror whole, becoming a shield for his daughter through sheer force of will. "I'm increasing security," he said finally. "Armed guards, 24 hours. Wherever you and Mia go." Elena nodded. "Thank you." That night, Dominic's men traced the SUV's plates. The results made his blood turn to ice. Vincent Caruso, his oldest enemy, had been watching, waiting, and now he knew exactly where to strike. Dominic stood at his window, staring at the city lights, understanding with terrible clarity what had changed. His enemies had found his weakness, but it wasn't just Mia anymore. Part 17. Intimate Moments. Something changed in the Rossi mansion after the incident. Dominic started coming home for dinner. Not occasionally. Not when business allowed. Every single night, his car pulled through the gates before 7, and he walked through the door to find his daughter setting the table while Elena stirred something fragrant on the stove. The kitchen had never been used like this before. For years, it had been the domain of hired chefs who prepared meals no one ate together. Now it smelled of garlic and rosemary and something Elena called her grandmother's secret recipe. "Daddy, you're home!" Mia launched herself at Dominic the moment he appeared. He caught her easily, swinging her up into his arms, and for a moment his entire face transformed. The cold mask of the ghost melted away, leaving only a father holding his child. "How was school today, princess?" "Amazing. We learned about butterflies and I got a gold star, and Tommy Miller said my drawing was pretty and the words tumbled out in an endless stream." Dominic listened to everyone, nodding seriously, asking questions, laughing at her jokes. Elena watched from the kitchen doorway, warmth spreading through her chest. This was what a family looked like. One evening, as they sat around the dining table finishing Elena's homemade lasagna, Mia dropped a bomb with the casual innocence only a 6-year-old could manage. "Daddy, why don't you marry Lena?" Elena choked on her water. Dominic's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "What?" they said in unison. Mia shrugged, completely unbothered by the chaos she had created. "Then Lena would stay forever, like a real family. You, me, and Lena." Elena's face burned crimson. She couldn't bring herself to look at Dominic. "Mia, sweetheart," she started. "It's not that simple. Why not?" Mia tilted her head. "You love me, and Daddy loves me, and I love both of you. That's what families are." The silence stretched unbearably. Later that night, after Mia was tucked in and dreaming, Elena escaped to the rooftop terrace. The city sprawled below like a carpet of stars, beautiful and distant. She didn't hear Dominic approach until he was beside her. "Mind if I join you?" She shook her head, and he settled into the chair next to hers. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence was comfortable somehow, filled with unspoken understanding. "Have you ever wanted a family of your own?" Dominic asked finally. Elena's fingers tightened around her glass. "I gave up on that dream a long time ago." "Why?" "Because everyone I've ever loved has left." The words came out quieter than she intended. "Or died. I stopped letting myself want things I couldn't have." Dominic nodded slowly. "My mother left when I was 10. She said living with my father was suffocating her." His jaw tightened. She didn't even look back when she walked out. I watched from the window until her car disappeared. "I'm sorry." Serena was the same, Mia's mother. He stared at the horizon. She said she wasn't made for motherhood, left a 2-year-old crying for her mama. Elena understood that wound, the specific agony of abandonment. "I loved someone once," she found herself saying, He took everything I had saved for college and disappeared. After that, I couldn't trust anyone." She paused. "And then Daniel died, and I blamed myself. I still do." Her voice cracked. "I'm afraid of love. Everyone I love leaves me behind." The confession hung in the night air. Dominic turned to look at her. In the moonlight, her profile was luminous, the strong line of her jaw, the shadows beneath her eyes, the quiet resilience that radiated from every part of her. "You're not like them," he said softly. Elena looked up. "You stayed. When everyone else ran, you stayed. For Mia." "No." His gray eyes held hers. "For both of us." The air between them felt charged, electric. Slowly, deliberately, Dominic reached for her hand. He lifted it gently and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture so tender it made Elena's heart stutter. "I won't do anything you don't want," he murmured against her skin. "But I need you to know something." Elena couldn't breathe. "You've changed everything. The house, my daughter." His voice dropped lower. "Me." She stared at him, her pulse racing, her carefully constructed walls trembling. That night, they didn't kiss. Nothing happened that could be defined or labeled, but something had shifted between them, an invisible thread connecting two shattered souls who had forgotten what it meant to hope. Part 18. The Storm. The morning started like any other. Mia had a school performance in 3 days, a spring recital where she would sing with her class for the first time. She needed a new dress, something special, something that would make her feel like the princess she was finally learning to believe she could be. "I'll find the perfect one," Elena promised, kissing the top of her head. "Pink with sparkles, right? And twirly," Mia added. "It has to twirl when I spin." Elena laughed. "Twirly it is." The shopping mall bustled with afternoon crowds. Families pushed strollers, teenagers clustered near food courts, elderly couples walked arm in arm. Normal life, safe life. Elena's security detail waited in the car outside Dominic's orders after the SUV incident. But inside the mall, surrounded by hundreds of people, she allowed herself to relax for the first time in weeks. She found the dress in the third store. Pink silk with delicate silver sparkles, a full skirt that would twirl beautifully. Mia would love it. Elena paid and headed toward the parking garage, shopping bag swinging from her arm, mind already planning how to style Mia's hair for the performance. She never saw them coming. 2 men materialized from between parked cars. Before Elena could scream, before she could run, a hand clamped over her mouth, and something sharp pierced her neck. The world dissolved into darkness. She woke to pain. Her head throbbed, her wrists burned where rough rope bit into skin. The air smelled of rust and mildew, and something chemical she couldn't identify. Elena forced her eyes open. A single bulb swung overhead, casting harsh shadows across a concrete room. No windows, 1 metal door, and sitting in a chair 3 feet away, watching her with cold amusement, was a man she had never seen before. "Ah, Miss Carter, welcome back." He was perhaps 60, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a suit that cost more than her former annual salary. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "My name is Vincent Caruso. I believe you've been living in my rival's house." Elena said nothing. Her mind raced, cataloging details. The dampness of the walls, the echo of dripping water, the faint rumble of trucks, a warehouse district. Maybe. "You're going to help me send a message to Dominic Rossi," Vincent continued pleasantly. "He has territory I want. You're going to convince him to give it to me. And if I refuse?" Vincent's smile widened. "Then I'll send you back to him in pieces." Elena met his gaze steadily. Her face was swollen, she could feel that much. They had hit her at some point, but the fear she expected to feel, it wasn't there. "You think I'm afraid of dying?" Vincent's eyebrows rose slightly. "I lost my parents when I was 8 years old," Elena said, her voice flat. "I lost my brother 4 years ago. I've been drowning in debt, working myself to death, watching everyone I love slip away." She leaned forward as far as her bonds would allow. "You can't take anything from me that hasn't already been taken, so do whatever you want. I'm not begging." For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Vincent's eyes. Across the city, Dominic's world was ending. "Boss." Marco burst through the office door without knocking. They took her. "Elena, she's gone." Dominic was on his feet before the words finished. "What?" Grabbed her in the parking garage. Security footage shows 2 men, black van, no plates. The color drained from Dominic's face. "Where?" The word came out strangled. "We don't know yet. We're tracking." Dominic's fist shattered the mahogany desk. Wood splintered. Blood welled from his knuckles. He didn't notice. "Find her!" In her bedroom, Mia sensed something was wrong. "Tony?" She tugged on the bodyguard's sleeve. "Where's Lena? She said she'd be back for lunch." Tony's face was carefully blank. "She got delayed, miss. Nothing to worry about." "But Lena promised." Mia's voice trembled. "Lena always keeps her promises. Lena said she would never leave me." Her eyes welled with tears. "Where is my Lena? 6 hours. 6 hours of Dominic pacing like a caged animal. 6 hours of every resource, every contact, every favor being called in. 6 hours of imagining what Vincent might be doing to her." When Marco finally burst in with coordinates, Dominic didn't wait for backup. He grabbed his gun and headed for the door. "Boss, you can't go alone, watch me." Marco caught his arm. "Dominic, stop." The use of his first name made him pause. "You love her," Marco said quietly. "I've known you 15 years, and I've never seen you like this. So don't be stupid. Don't get yourself killed when she needs you to save her." Dominic stared at his oldest friend. Love. The word echoed in his hollow chest. He thought of Elena's laugh, her strength, the way she looked at him without fear, the way she held his daughter, the way she had walked through broken glass to reach a child no one else would touch. "Get the team," he said finally. "We leave in 5 minutes." In the back of the SUV, speeding toward an abandoned warehouse on the city's edge, Dominic closed his eyes. Every moment with Elena played through his mind like a film. Her smile, her voice, the night on the terrace when she had trembled beneath his touch. "Keep her safe," he whispered into the darkness. It was the closest thing to prayer he had offered in 30 years. Part 19. Rescue and Confession. The warehouse door exploded inward. Dominic moved through the chaos like death itself. Silent, precise, unstoppable. His men fanned out behind him, but he was already ahead, driven by something beyond strategy or training. Gunfire erupted. Shouts echoed off concrete walls. Vincent's men fell one by one, outmatched by a force fighting not for territory or money, but for something far more dangerous. Love. Dominic kicked open the door to the back room and found her. Elena sat bound to a chair, her face swollen and bruised, dried blood crusted at the corner of her lip. But her eyes blazed with the same fierce light that had first caught his attention 3 months ago. She was alive. Elena. Her name tore from his throat as he crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands shook as he cut the ropes binding her wrists, his fingers fumbling in a way they never had before. "I'm here," he breathed. "I've got you." The moment she was free, Dominic pulled her into his arms. He held her so tightly she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair, his whole body trembling. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you? I'll kill every single one of them. I swear I'm okay." Elena's voice was hoarse but steady. "Dominic, I'm okay." He pulled back just enough to look at her face, his thumbs tracing gently over the bruises. His gray eyes glistened with something she had never seen there before. Fear, relief, love. "Mia," Elena whispered. "Is Mia? You almost died." Dominic stared at her in disbelief. "And you're asking about my daughter? She must be so scared. I promised I wouldn't leave her." Something broke open in Dominic's chest. He pressed his forehead against hers, breathing her in. "She's safe. Tony's with her. She's waiting for you." Back at the mansion, Elena was examined by Dominic's private physician. Bruises, minor lacerations, mild dehydration. Nothing permanent, nothing that wouldn't heal. The physical wounds, at least. She had barely finished getting cleaned up when the door burst open. "Lena!" Mia flew across the room and threw herself into Elena's arms, sobbing. Her small body shook with the force of her tears. "You came back! You came back! They said you were gone, but I knew you would come back." Elena held her tight, her own tears falling freely. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise?" Mia looked up, her face streaked with tears. "Promise forever?" "Forever," Elena whispered. "I promise." Hours later, after Mia had finally fallen asleep curled against Elena's side, after the doctor left and the security team reported that Vincent Caruso was in custody, the mansion fell quiet. Elena sat on the edge of her bed, staring at nothing. A soft knock broke the silence. Dominic stood in the doorway, his shirt untucked, his hair disheveled. He looked nothing like the polished crime boss the world feared. He looked like a man who had almost lost everything. "You should be resting," he said quietly. "I can't sleep." He entered slowly, settling onto the bed beside her, close enough to touch, but not touching. "I'm sorry." His voice was rough. "This is my fault. My world put you in danger. I chose to be here." "Why?" The question seemed torn from somewhere deep inside him. "You could leave any time. You should leave. After tonight, You should run as far from me as possible." Elena turned to look at him. "And go where?" "Anywhere. Somewhere safe. Somewhere my enemies can't reach you." "Dominic," she said his name softly. "For 19 years, I had nowhere to belong, no one to come home to. I worked and survived and existed, but I was never home." Her voice cracked. "But here, with Mia, with you, for the first time in my life, I feel like I have a place, a family, something worth fighting for." Dominic reached for her hand. His fingers interlaced with hers, warm and strong. "I love you, Elena." The words hung in the air between them. "I know I don't deserve you. My hands are stained with things that would horrify you. My world is dark and dangerous, and I have enemies who will never stop coming." He lifted her hand to his lips. "But I love you, and I will spend the rest of my life protecting you, if you let me." Elena's tears fell freely now. "I'm scared. Everyone I've ever loved has left me. I won't leave." Dominic cupped her face in his hands, his eyes burning into hers. "I swear on my daughter's life, I will never leave you." And then he kissed her, not gently, not tentatively. This was a kiss of desperation and relief, of years of loneliness finally ending, of two broken people finding each other in the dark. Elena kissed him back with everything she had, every fear, every hope, every piece of her shattered heart. That night, she fell asleep in Dominic's arms. For the first time in 19 years, Elena Carter felt safe. And Dominic Rossi, for the first time in his life, said "I love you," and meant it with every fiber of his being. Part 20. 1 year later. Epilogue. The garden had never looked more beautiful. White roses climbed the trellises. Fairy lights twinkled in the afternoon sun. A string quartet played softly as 30 guests sat in elegant chairs arranged on the emerald lawn of the Rossi estate. This was not the wedding Los Angeles had expected from Dominic Rossi. No, 500 guests. No celebrity appearances. No display of wealth and power. Just family. Just love. Elena stood at the end of the aisle, her simple white dress flowing in the gentle breeze. No designer label. No diamonds dripping from her neck. Just a woman who had finally found her place in the world. Beside her walked Mia, 7 years old now, dressed in a miniature white gown with a basket of rose petals clutched in her hands. She scattered them with the seriousness of someone performing the most important task of her life. And in the front row, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks, sat Martha Chen, healthy, whole, alive. Her cancer was in remission. The doctors called it a miracle. Elena called it love. Dominic waited at the altar, and for the first time in his life, the man they called the ghost was trembling, not from fear, from overwhelming gratitude that this woman, this extraordinary woman, had chosen him. The officiant spoke of love and commitment, but Dominic heard none of it. He only saw Elena. When it came time for vows, he took her hands in his. "Elena," his voice broke on her name, "you are the light in my darkness. Before you, I didn't know what love meant. I thought it was weakness. I thought it was something that could be taken away." He paused, steadying himself. "But you taught me that love is strength. You walked through broken glass for a child who wasn't yours. You stayed when everyone else ran. You saw the man beneath the monster. Tears glistened in his gray eyes. I vow to spend every day of my life being worthy of you." Elena squeezed his hands, her own tears falling freely. "Dominic, for 19 years, I had no home. I had places I slept, but nowhere I belonged. I had people around me, but no one who truly saw me." Her voice wavered but held. "You gave me a home. You gave me a family. You gave me a daughter who calls me Mama, and a future I never dared to dream of." She smiled through her tears. "You are my home, and I will never leave." They exchanged rings. They kissed, and Mia cheered so loudly that everyone laughed through their tears. After the ceremony, Elena found her grandmother sitting alone in the garden, gazing at the roses. "Nana," Martha looked up, her eyes still wet. "Come sit with me, my beautiful girl." Elena settled beside her, taking her grandmother's fragile hand. "I'm so proud of you," Martha whispered. "Your parents would be too. I was afraid you wouldn't accept this. Accept him." Martha shook her head slowly. "I see how he looks at you. I see how that little girl blooms when you're near. That's all that matters." Elena's throat tightened. "Daniel would have loved Mia. They're so alike." "I know." Martha smiled softly. "He's watching you right now. I can feel it. He's happy for you, sweetheart. Finally happy." A small hand tugged at Elena's dress. "Mama Lena?" Elena turned to find Mia looking up at her with those dark eyes she had come to love more than her own heartbeat. "Yes, Angel? I love you, Mama." Elena knelt down, gathering the little girl into her arms. I love you too, sweet girl. Forever and always. Mia pulled back slightly, her expression serious. Can I call your Nana my grandma too? Elena looked at Martha, who was already nodding, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Of course you can, my darling, Martha said. I would be honored. Mia's face split into a radiant smile, and she threw her arms around the old woman. 3 generations, one family, forged not by blood, but by choice. That evening, as the last guests departed, Elena found Dominic standing alone on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. What are you thinking? She asked, slipping her hand into his. That I don't deserve this. He turned to face her. A year ago, I was a monster. I had power, money, fear, but nothing real. Nothing that mattered. He pulled her close. You changed everything, Elena. You made me want to be better. And he had become better. Over the past year, Dominic had systematically dismantled his criminal empire. The violence, the threats, the darkness, all of it, gone. In its place, he had built legitimate businesses, real estate, development. Marco now served as his COO, helping him navigate a world where deals were made with handshakes instead of threats. You did that yourself, Elena said softly. I just reminded you who you could be. Dominic kissed her forehead. You saved me. Later that night, in the privacy of their bedroom, Elena handed Dominic a small white stick. He stared at it, uncomprehending. 2 pink lines. Elena. His voice cracked. Is this? We're going to have a baby. The most feared man on the West Coast fell to his knees and wept. Not tears of sorrow. Tears of impossible joy. Tears of a man who had never believed he could have this. A wife who loved him. A daughter who adored him. And now a child growing in the woman who had transformed his entire world. We're having a baby, he repeated, pressing his lips to her stomach. We're having a baby. That night, their little family gathered on the rooftop terrace one last time. Mia lay between Dominic and Elena, pointing at stars while Martha watched television in the living room below, finally at peace. Daddy? Mama? Mia's voice was sleepy. Yes, sweetheart? Can the baby be a brother? I want to teach him how to be brave like Daddy and kind like Mama. Elena laughed softly. We'll see what we get. But whatever it is, you'll be the best big sister in the world. Mia smiled and closed her eyes, drifting off between the 2 people she loved most. Elena watched her sleep, her mind traveling back to that night at Lumiere, the sound of shattering crystal, a little girl screaming in pain no child should know, a room full of people too afraid to move, and Elena, invisible, forgotten, alone, making a choice that would change everything. She had walked through broken glass that night, not because she was brave, but because she recognized the wound, because she had carried it herself for 19 years. Now, looking at the family gathered around her, Elena finally understood. She was never meant to be invisible. She was meant to be found. Dominic watched his wife and daughter sleep, the city lights twinkling below like earthbound stars. He remembered Elena's words from their very first meeting, the words that had cracked open his frozen heart. Everyone deserves someone who stays. He had found someone who stayed, and he would never let her go. In the midst of shattered crystal and chaos, they had found each other, not because they were perfect, but because they were broken in the same way. And sometimes, when broken pieces find each other, they create something more beautiful than either could have been alone. Sometimes, all we need is someone to see our pain, to stay through the storm, and to believe that love is stronger than fear. Elena Carter had found that, and she would never be invisible again. Dear friends, this story carries profound messages for all of us. First, never underestimate the power of simply staying. In a world where people constantly leave, being someone who remains can change everything. Elena didn't have superpowers. She simply refused to walk away from a child in pain. Second, our deepest wounds can become our greatest gifts. Elena's own suffering allowed her to recognize Mia's pain. Sometimes our scars are not weaknesses. They are bridges that connect us to others who are hurting. Third, it is never too late to change. Dominic spent decades building an empire of darkness, yet love transformed him. No matter how far we have traveled down the wrong path, we can always choose a different direction. Fourth, family is not always about blood. It is about who shows up, who stays, who chooses you when they could easily walk away. And finally, everyone deserves to be seen. So many people around us are invisible: the waitress, the cleaner, the person sitting alone. Perhaps today, we can be the one who notices, the one who stays. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and tap the notification bell. so you never miss our daily stories of love, hope, and human connection. Hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear that they are not invisible, that they matter, that they are worthy of love. We would love to hear from you in the comments below. How did this story make you feel? Have you ever met someone who saw you when others looked right through you? Have you been that person for someone else? Share your thoughts, your experiences, your heart with us. Every comment you write becomes part of our community, a family of people who believe in the transformative power of love and kindness. Thank you for being here with us today. We wish you good health, happiness, and peace in your daily life. May you find people who stay, and may you have the courage to be someone who stays for others. Goodbye for now, and we will see you in our next video. Take care of yourselves and each other. See you soon.